Hey, Entre Nation. Okay, so you've come here today because you probably want to know how to close big deals. Well, I'm so excited about this topic. It's actually really easy to close once you have created a set of key standards for yourself, a set of excellence standards. And I'm going to share them with you here in a moment, but first, I want you to think about where you are currently with your own sales. Have you been making a lot of sales? Have you received a bunch of leads, but they're maybe from people who don't commit? Have you actually written out your sales goals and followed through with them? Maybe you're frustrated that you're doing all you seem like you can to make a sale, but it's just not happening. Well, you're in the right place. You know, I used to run an agency where we had a team of over 50 people, and I had to ensure that that team was always on fire with their sales. Every day, we were spending all this money to bring in all these leads, and if the sales weren't on point, we could go out of business. In any 2 to 4 week period, we could go out of business if sales were not on point. Sales is growth, right? We're gonna get into that, but first, if you would, go ahead and hit subscribe. I appreciate your support on this channel, helps me bring you more excellent content, and I'm going to share with you now my 6 tips on closing deals. Being able to close a sale is all about having a structured sales process that considers each phase of a sale. A lot of people think that sales is just about talent or having some natural gift. Honestly, it's about process. And the initial impression that you give somebody about yourself, about your services, about your business are so crucial to making a sale. You really never do get a second chance to make a first impression when it comes to sales. So the first step is to create a really high standard for your service and for yourself that you will be excellent in everything to do with your business. And I would suggest that you just make it a standard for your whole life, right? But in terms of selling, the way the product looks, the way the product is marketed, all the people that you staff your organization with, the way you present yourself, it all needs to be held to a high standard of excellence. That's the one thing you can put on any product that makes it more attractive is just raising the standard with which it's all presented. You know, sales is about value. It's about giving service, and people want to spend money on things that seem valuable. They don't want to spend money on things that seem cheap. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't even really matter what it does. There's just an air of excellence and high standards that people want to invest in. So the question is, how much value do you personally place on yourself and on your product and on your ability to communicate the value of that product? The value that you set, and this may sound kind of cosmic and hocus pocus, but the value that you set on yourself and your product and the way that you communicate is going to reflect across everything you do in your sales, in your business, even your whole life, and the way the clients experience you. So I suggest taking a little time to actually write out your goals, not just your sales goals, but your overall goals. Whatever inspires you and gets you motivated is going to show through in what you offer and how you offer to your clients. Now, I know you may be looking for me to rattle off some magical closing line that you can say, or my $1 million script you can follow, and I get that. Obviously having the right words is important, but frankly, those types of things are not nearly as effective as being genuine. I've seen salespeople crush it with no script. I've seen salespeople with a proven script that worked for well for some people, completely bomb, and there's like no magic script you could give the person who's not a good communicator and who's not natural and authentic. Sales, first and foremost, is about building trust. And trust isn't about words, it's about style, it's about delivery, it's about energy. So whether it's from the initial webinar that somebody watches, to the way the messaging is crafted through the follow-up process, to the things that you actually say and how you say them, you have to weave in a feeling of authenticity. And ultimately, you have to be prepared and convinced and confident of your ability to deliver not just what you offer, but I would say 100 times more than you offer. And that's actually how you build trust. I use, for example, in my company, Entre, we have a course that we sell for $39 that I personally believe we could easily sell for $500 to $1,000. It would be worth it. Definitely at $500, it would be worth it. But we sell it for $39. Sometimes we sell it for $7. We'll do coupons or promotions. Just because we want people to go, oh my gosh, I got this thing for $39 and I feel like, I would have spent $1,000 for this. That builds trust in a way that there's no magic script or magic words or anything you could do or say other than just delivering, right? It comes down to delivering, over-delivering. And this is all a part of the number one rule of sales. I believe it's actually almost the only rule of sales. Give more than you receive. Give more than you ask to receive. And this shows up in a few different ways. First, you have to understand, people aren't buying the product. They aren't buying the service. They're buying the value. They don't buy things that are worth what they think they're paying for it. If I give you $1 and you trade me $1 for $1, neither one of us came out of that ahead. There'd be no point, right? I'm only going to give you $1 if I think I'm going to get back something that's at least worth a little more than $1. Otherwise, I'm just swapping dollars. Nobody goes around swapping dollars. They have to feel like they're buying a gap of value that's greater than what they're paying for it. And from there, the closing can happen more organically. And it may not be immediate, it may not be as fast as you want, but over time, when the person is ready to spend money to invest in the next level of the solution, it's you they will turn to. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fast you want to go. Wanting to go fast, I could say, if you're watching this video, how's that working for you? You want to go fast, how's that going? It doesn't matter how fast you want to go. It matters what kind of a relationship you can build, right? And another aspect of giving great value is to set a form of action for your prospect to take. Every single thing you do, every single comment you respond to, every single piece of content you create, there should always be, every video you make, always be a call to action. Watch this video all the way through, and I promise you, at the end of this video, I will have a call to action, something for you to do. Don't waste your time creating anything that delivers a message that doesn't direct the person on what to do to get to the next step. You may have thousands of leads, but if you're not clearly telling them what to do, or if they're not willing to take the action, then they're most likely they're not committed. They're not going to say yes to the purchase if they're not even willing to say yes to, a survey or an evaluation or maybe watching another video or filling out an application. And the best way that you position the call to action is to say that you want to offer them some tools or some homework or something that's more customized to what they need, but you need to get some information for them first, either so that you can physically or digitally send it to them, like I need your email so that I can email you this thing, or some more information so that you can actually tailor it to their specific needs, like, what's your current level of income and what are you trying to achieve, and then let me give you a plan for that, right? And at that point, you're making them feel empowered. They still actually feel like they're getting value even while they're giving you information. And you're helping them figure out for themselves and putting the power in their hands about whether or not they want to move forward or not. And this technique, another term we use for it is called a micro commitment. You give them a step before you actually get into the sales conversation, is really, really powerful. And the leads that do whatever the step is are much more likely to sign up, or at the very least, the fact that they took that step gets them thinking about it and remembering how helpful you were and the tools that you gave them were, so that they're, when it is time for them to buy, they remember you. And the next standard for closing successfully is to listen more than you speak. In the world we live in, people are so overwhelmed with information, they will naturally resist listening to you explaining all the best features and why such and such is good for them. And so many people in sales, they try to say all about the product's best features and then find out actually the client isn't interested in any of that, or frankly, the client didn't even hear anything, because the client has one very specific need, one very specific problem that they're trying to solve, and all that matters is you finding out what that is. When the moment finally comes, after all the work that you've done, the micro commitments and the steps and the calls to action and the listening, you want to make sure that you are listening to what they say, identifying their particular point of pain, and then steering the conversation directly to how you're going to solve that problem. That's, again, why it's so useful to do surveys and ask for feedback. If your client goes to the effort of completing a survey, you want to make sure that you actually read the survey. It's not about just getting them to take the micro commitment step and going, oh, sweet, they're hooked, they're going to buy whatever I sell. Actually read it, understand their situation and what they are looking to accomplish. There's nothing worse than being the sales guy that asks a million questions because you're trying to get up to speed on where they are, and they've actually already told you in some sort of a survey and an evaluation. So, ultimately it comes down to, if you actually care, you're going to listen. Part of being a good salesperson is genuinely want to help people, because then when they give you information, you're not going to miss it because you're actually going to care. You're going to be interested. So use open-ended questions, get them talking, and then sit back and let them basically tell you what they're going to need to hear in order to want to move forward with you. And frankly, where a lot of people screw this up is they're so eager to close the sale that they're afraid to let the person that they're trying to sell to feel like they have choice in the process. And I get that you're trying to steer the conversation, but in my experience, if people feel that you're genuinely interested and that you genuinely care, then you can ask a question like, so would you like to see what comes next? Or would you like to know the next steps to take? Or would you like to understand more about how we can help you? A lot of salespeople are scared to ask those questions because they feel like, they're giving the person an out. They're giving the person room to say, nah, I'm really not interested. Look, if the person's really not interested, it's actually okay to let them tell you that they're not interested. You'll save each other some time. But if they have actually felt that you genuinely care, in my experience, it is very, very rare that if you have gotten them to identify the pain that they're struggling with and they're actually experiencing an empathetic conversation, and you've properly positioned yourself as an authority, and you're talking about how to solve that problem, it's very rare that you're going to say, so would you like to learn how to, address that they're going to say, no, I'm not interested, because everybody's interested in healing their pain. So if you've done the work effectively, you can actually give the other party a lot more freedom and a lot more choice than it might feel comfortable to. It's like a fish, and I don't necessarily love the metaphor of like reeling them in, but I get it in a sales context. Sometimes you can let them run, right? And it's okay. And don't be afraid to. If you're always tugging too hard, again, for purposes of the metaphor, you'll pop the line. And the next standard is to give incredible value regardless of the outcome. So what happens if at this point in the closing process they say no? If a client says no, it could mean a few things. It could be there was a mismatch between what you offer and who you think will actually love the product. So in that case, check out who you're attracting in your marketing. If they have in fact been led through a process of receiving great value through your training or your webinars or whatever surveys or micro commitment steps, then the people who reach you should be pretty close to ready to sign up if they were actually a fit to begin with. So ask yourself the question, did I really, really listen to them? Was I getting them very, very clear on specific and measurable goals? And did I show them how my product was a fit with an action plan to actually reach those goals? And if it's a financial objection, always realize that money is an excuse for something deeper. What can you actually say in the moment that you hear a no? Like a lot of people just get dejected and then it's the end of it and they leave a really sour taste in their mouth and they kill any possibilities of follow-up or somebody coming back later. So if you get a no, first of all, thank them for their time, but don't just leave it there. If you don't acknowledge their situation or make sure they realize that you were listening, then it will feel like the inquiry process was not complete. I remember a while ago, 10 years ago, I was looking into joining an education program. And after the whole process, it felt like a no. The person basically just hung up on me when they heard no. And I was left feeling like my decision to not join up was actually, frankly, pretty wise because they weren't listening to why I was saying no. Sometimes a no is an invitation. It's an expression of a desire to be heard. So if you hear no, you can simply highlight, why did they sign up in the first place? Like, okay, I respect your decision. I'm not here to convince you to join or buy, but I just want to remind you that you said you were ready to do this thing or you were ready to make this change in your life. So when you feel ready to take that step, I'm here for you. Would you like me to check in with you? And that gives them the option, gives you the option to follow up gracefully. And again, you give them added value by checking back in with them. And then the final standard is to expect excellence. Remember, we started by demonstrating excellence and holding yourself to the standard of excellence. The final standard is to expect it. This means you know your own worth. Expect it from yourself. Expect it from your customers. Hold everyone else to the same standard. You are what you attract, and you can attract so many people and opportunities in your life just by being awesome. Cheesy as it may sound, holding yourself to the standard of absolute excellence in all things is the ultimate lead magnet, especially when it's genuine. And frankly, you should want to be excellent So it should always be genuine to hold yourself to that standard. So keep on pushing yourself. Always be improving and write out your goals, write out your targets in sales and everything else, and push hard for those things. So to sum all that up, the standards when it comes to closing sales are: first, be excellent in yourself, your products, the services you offer, your life as a whole. 2, be genuine. 3 was give more than you receive. 4 was listen more than you speak. 5 was to give incredible value. And 6 is to expect excellence. So go ahead and write in the comments below, if you would, which of these standards helped you the most in closing sales, which ones you may have already been holding yourself to. I always love hearing from you. Feel free to ask any questions. And if you found this video useful, I have many, hundreds more about wealth generation, entrepreneurship, and just generally how to have an awesome life that you can check out on my channel. Please do go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, make sure you click the bell for notifications. You can find me online at EntreNation.com or at the EntreNation group in Facebook. It's a free group, anybody can join, and I will post that below in the comments. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next one.